This week's episode is going to be about how Shakespeare's Macbeth applies to us today. I'm going to be introducing two guests, our first being the non-profit worker Jada, who specializes with philosophy. So, what is your overall opinion on the story of Macbeth?
When I first saw the general overview of Macbeth, I thought it was quite boring and I didn't really get the message. But after I dove deeper into the play and really explored the themes and characters' intentions, I thought it was quite interesting.
Cool. So, what do you believe is the main moral of the story?
For example, don't be tempted to do bad things in order to gain power. Even if you think that you're in too deep, there's always a way out and you can stop. Macbeth decides that he deserves to be king because the witches put the idea in his head. Yet, the ambition was already there.
Are there any examples of this in the story?
Macbeth investigates the nature of evil and the human soul's corruption. Evil, according to Macbeth, is the polar opposite of humanity, a divergence for what is natural for humans, but evil begins in the human heart. For example, Lady Macbeth's human nature drives her to do everything it takes to achieve her goal. She lacks the stereotypical motherly and femininity that was expected of women in that time period, and she is a master manipulator. Her human nature exploits these attributes, in the end contributing to her and her husband's downfall.
Now, I know that Banquo isn't talked about much when discussing Macbeth, so what do you think about Banquo's nature?
Finally, Banquo was aware of the witch's prophecy from the start, therefore probably realized Macbeth gained the throne unlawfully. Then, either because of failure to act on his suspicions or the secret hope that his descendants would inherit the throne someday, just like the witches prophesied. This tragic flaw was his downfall. But despite the characters' evil doings, the characters do feel guilt about their actions.
Could you elaborate on that?
For example, when Macbeth says, "Will all great Neptune's ocean wash this blood clean from my hand? No, this my hand will rather the multitudinous seas incarnadine after murdering King Duncan." He's referring to the literal blood on his hands, as well as his sense of guilt. Additionally, Macbeth says, "Thy bones are marrowless, thy blood is cold. Thou hast no speculation in those eyes," when he sees Banquo's ghost at the banquet. The ghost confesses his guilt in the murder of Banquo and his young son. His remorse is so strong that he loses his sense of reality and is unsure whether or not he is hallucinating. He tries to assure himself that Banquo is actually dead. Macbeth explains that his troubled consciousness is causing him to lose his grasp on sanity in this way.
I find that quite interesting. Are there any more examples of this in the story?
Another more prominent example is Lady Macbeth. She says, to bed, there's knocking at the gate. Come, 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 give me your hand. What's done cannot be undone. To bed, to bed, to bed." After she spiraled into insanity, they are Lady Macbeth's final words in the play, and they illustrate how remorse has broken down her ambitious and merciless attitude. The violence and death, no matter how much she repents, cannot be undone.
Right. And last question, how much do you think humans have changed since then?
We haven't changed much in terms of unchecked ambition and greed, but supernatural intervention is way less likely. I think that now how the crimes and violations are carried out are more thought out and calculated. Greed and exploitation is incredibly normalized today that the consequences would be none or much less detrimental.
Next, we have Jason, who's been working on the criminal justice system for over 10 years. She would like to share some of her insights from Macbeth as a lawyer.
Hello, I'm Jocelyn and I'm a specialist in law.
So, Jason, we're very happy to have you here with us today. Would you mind talking us a little bit through treason and how it relates to Macbeth?
In society today, committing treason is one of the most extreme things you can be punished for. While rare acts of treason and high treason are still punishable, although the death penalty is no longer the ultimate sentence after it was scrapped in 1998 under the Crime and Disorder Act, and that is truly very fortunate for anyone committing acts of treason. Prosecution services are, in fact, society's principles mean of pursuing punishment of criminal behavior. We can see the consequences of not having these facilities in Macbeth.
What are the main themes of Macbeth to you?
To me, the main themes of Macbeth was the destruction brought when ambition goes unchecked by moral constraints and the corruption behind it. In the play, it used powerful expressions to portray two main characters, Macbeth, who's a courageous Scottish general, who's actually not inclined to commit evil deeds, yet he deeply desires for more power and advancement. He kills Duncan, and afterwards he stews in guilt and paranoia. Lady Macbeth, on the other hand, pursues her goals with greater determination, yet she's less capable of withstanding her repercussions of her immoral acts. But the main problem the play suggests is that once one decides to use violence to further one's quest for power, it is difficult to stop. There's always going to be more potential threats to the throne, like Banquo, Fleance, Macduff. It's always tempting to use violence to dispose of them.
Clearly, there's been a lot of injustice shown in Macbeth. Has there been any justice shown in the story at all?
Macbeth, Shakespeare had only shown justice to have been established when Macduff had slaughtered Macbeth due to all of the crimes he had committed and all of the lives he had taken. Another form of justice occurred when Lady Macbeth commits suicide because she was a big part of the murder of King Duncan.
Thank you, Jaslyn and Jada, for coming into the studio tonight, and I want to thank all my listeners for supporting me. Tune in next Monday for the next episode, and have a great night.